Welcome to Javel Stories. Before we continue with the story, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell to always get notified for upcoming stories, and also share the story with loved ones and friends. Thank you very much. The 1st of December had arrived, and with it came the electrifying buzz of Christmas anticipation in the Smith household. Outside, frost painted the windows, and the faint scent of burning coal lingered in the crisp northern air. The small town was already alive with twinkling lights and wreaths hung on doors, but inside the Smiths' modest home, the magic was only just beginning. Lucy, the eldest at 13, had been the first to set the holiday mood. She'd carefully unwrapped the family's advent calendar the night before, placing it proudly on the mantel. Unlike the modern chocolate-filled versions, this was an old-fashioned calendar with beautiful illustrations behind each door. The first window revealed a golden star, which Lucy explained symbolized the Star of Bethlehem. Her siblings, 10-year-old Sam and 7-year-old Jamie, listened in awe, though Jamie's excitement quickly shifted to imagining what Santa might bring him. "I've been extra good this year," Jamie declared over breakfast, his cheeks red from the cold as he drank his hot chocolate. "Santa's going to bring me the best toys." His voice was filled with innocent conviction. Sam rolled his eyes, the cynicism of his tween years creeping in. "Don't get your hopes up, Jamie. You'll probably just get socks." Jamie stuck his tongue out in retaliation, but Lucy stepped in to maintain peace. "Santa doesn't bring socks," she said with authority. "He brings exactly what we wish for if we're good." Their mother, Mary, entered the kitchen just then, her arms full of shopping bags. "Good morning, my little elves," she greeted, dropping the bags on the counter with a satisfied sigh. "Guess who just bought decorations for the tree?" Cheers erupted from the children. Decorating the Christmas tree was one of their favorite traditions, second only to opening presents on Christmas morning. Tom, their father, soon joined them, wiping his hands on a rag after tinkering with the old heater in the living room. "Right," he announced, "time to dig out the ornaments." The family spent the next few hours turning the house into a winter wonderland. Boxes of tinsel, lights, and baubles were retrieved from the attic, some of them so old they'd been passed down for generations. Jamie, ever the clumsy one, nearly dropped a glass bauble shaped like a snowman. "Careful," Lucy scolded, snatching it from his hands. "That belonged to Grandma." Meanwhile, Tom wrestled with the Christmas lights, muttering under his breath about tangled wires. Mary fussed over the arrangement of tinsel, ensuring it was evenly draped. By mid-afternoon, the tree was finally ready. Tom climbed a rickety ladder to place the star on top, and when the lights were plugged in, the tree came to life in a dazzling display of color. That evening, as they sat together by the fire, sipping hot cocoa, Jamie clutched a neatly folded letter addressed to Santa. "You think he'll bring everything I want?" he asked nervously. Mary smiled, smoothing his hair. "Christmas is full of surprises, Jamie. You just wait and see." The next morning, the Smiths awoke to a world transformed. Overnight, the northern sky had emptied its snow-filled clouds onto the town, leaving behind a thick, glittering blanket of white. Jamie was the first to notice. He yanked open his curtains and let out an excited whoop. "Lucy! Sam! Mom! Dad! It's snowing!" The house stirred into action. Sam groaned from beneath his quilt, muttering about the early wake-up call, while Lucy peered out of her own window with a grin. "It's perfect snow for sledging," she called, already thinking about where they'd stored the old sled in the shed. Breakfast was a hurried affair as the children scrambled to get ready. Jamie couldn't find his gloves, leading to a frantic search through the house. "Check the coat rack," Mary called from the kitchen, where she was sipping her tea and watching her children buzz about like a hive of bees. Tom had already ventured outside to shovel the walkway, his breaths visible in the icy air. When Jamie finally emerged with mismatched gloves and a lopsided hat, the three children burst into the front yard, their boots crunching in the fresh snow. The cold bit at their cheeks, but the excitement of a snow day made them immune to discomfort. "Let's make a snowman," Jamie exclaimed, already on his hands and knees rolling a snowball that quickly grew larger. Sam rolled his eyes but joined in, his competitive spirit pushing him to create the biggest section of the snowman. Lucy, ever the perfectionist, focused on shaping the head. "Give it a scarf," Jamie shouted, running back inside to grab an old red scarf from the hallway. When he returned, the snowman was almost complete, with buttons for eyes and a crooked carrot nose Lucy had salvaged from the kitchen. The snowman stood proudly in their front yard, earning the admiration of neighbors who passed by. "Good work, kids," Tom said as he leaned on his shovel, surveying their creation. But the day's adventures weren't over yet. Lucy suggested a snowball fight, and within moments, alliances were formed. Lucy and Sam teamed up against Jamie, who fought valiantly but was quickly overwhelmed by their coordinated attacks. "You're supposed to aim at the torso, not the head," Jamie shouted indignantly as a snowball splattered against his hat. After an hour of laughter, shrieks, and pink noses, Mary called them inside for hot chocolate. The smell of cocoa and freshly baked cookies greeted them as they peeled off their wet boots and coats. Jamie's face was glowing as he recounted the snowball fight in exaggerated detail. "And then I dodged Sam's snowball like this," he said, dramatically ducking under an imaginary projectile. As the family sat around the table sipping their drinks, Lucy glanced outside at their snowman, now casting a long shadow in the setting sun. "This is the best start to Christmas ever," she said with a satisfied smile. Tom grinned, "And it's only just begun." The Smith household was bustling with festive energy as the children prepared their letters to Santa. Jamie, the youngest and most excited, sat at the kitchen table with a stack of colored paper, a crayon in his hand, and a determined look on his face. Lucy and Sam, now slightly skeptical of the whole Santa affair, decided to write their letters anyway, if only to humor their little brother. "What are you going to ask for, Lucy?" Jamie asked, glancing at his sister. His tone was serious, as though her request might directly compete with his. Lucy shrugged, tapping her pen thoughtfully. "I don't know yet. Maybe a new book or some art supplies." She didn't need much, but she figured Santa would appreciate a simple request. Sam, seated next to her, smirked. "I'm asking for a stereo. Something cool. Not like that old one Dad has." Jamie gasped. "A stereo? But Santa can't carry something that big on his sleigh." He looked genuinely concerned about the logistics of Santa's delivery system. "Of course he can," Lucy said, rolling her eyes. "Santa's magic. He can carry anything." Relieved, Jamie returned to his own letter. His handwriting was messy, and his spelling left much to be desired, but the intent was clear. He wanted Ghostbusters toys, the Ecto, one car, and all 4 Ghostbuster action figures. He also threw in a few other items for good measure, a yo-yo, a comic book, and rather ambitiously a pet hamster. "Jamie, you can't just ask for everything," Lucy teased, peering over his shoulder. "Santa has to bring gifts to all the kids in the world." "I know," Jamie said, puffing out his chest. "That's why I've been extra good this year. I even helped Mum wash the dishes." Lucy and Sam exchanged a glance, suppressing laughter. Jamie's help with the dishes often resulted in more work for their mom, but no one could deny his effort. Mary walked into the room with a tray of cookies, smiling as she saw her children hard at work. "Are those your letters for Santa?" she asked, placing the tray on the table. "Yes, Mum," Jamie said, beaming. "Do you think he'll read them?" "Of course, sweetheart," Mary said, ruffling his hair. "But you'd better hurry. We need to send them to the North Pole in time." Jamie's face turned serious as he folded his letter carefully and placed it in an envelope. He handed it to Mary, who promised to mail it first thing in morning. Lucy and Sam followed suit, though their letters were far less enthusiastic. For them, the magic of Santa had started to fade, but they couldn't bring themselves to spoil it for Jamie. Later that evening, as the children lay in bed, Jamie whispered to Sam across the room, "Do you think Santa will really come?" Sam hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, Jamie, he'll come. Just wait and see." As the house fell quiet, Jamie drifted off to sleep, dreaming of sleigh bells and the Ghostbusters car. The following morning, the Smith household stirred to the familiar December chill. But there was an unusual commotion in the living room. Lucy, always the first to wake up, stood in front of the mantel, her arms crossed and her lips pressed into a thin line. The Advent calendar, which had been pristine the night before, was now in complete disarray. Every single door had been opened. "Jamie!" Lucy's voice echoed through the house, pulling Sam out of his half-asleep state and sending their youngest sibling skittering down the hallway. Jamie appeared moments later, rubbing his eyes and clutching his blanket. "What's wrong?" he asked, though his face betrayed his guilt. Lucy pointed an accusing finger at the advent calendar. "What did you do?" Jamie's gaze dropped to the floor. I just wanted to see the pictures behind all the doors." Sam joined them in the living room, suppressing a grin as he surveyed the scene. "Jamie, you're supposed to open one door a day. That's the whole point of an advent calendar." "I couldn't help it," Jamie cried, his voice rising in defense. "I just wanted to see if there was a big surprise on the 24th. Lucy groaned, running a hand through her hair. "Now it's ruined. We don't get to open any more doors." Mary entered the room, tying her robe around her waist and stifling a yawn. "What's all the fuss about?" Jamie opened every single door on the advent calendar. Lucy exclaimed, gesturing toward the now empty calendar. "It's not even Christmas yet." Mary took one look at Jamie's wide-eyed, remorseful expression and sighed. "Jamie, advent calendars are meant to help us count down to Christmas. Opening all the doors at once takes away the fun." Jamie sniffled, clearly ashamed. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just got too excited." Tom, who had been listening from the hallway, stepped in with a reassuring grin. "Well, it's not the end of the world. The pictures are still there, aren't they? Let's see." He leaned in, examining the little festive illustrations behind each door. Here's a nice one, a sleigh with reindeer." "That's not the point, Dad." Lucy snapped. "Now there's nothing to look forward to every morning." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lucy, it's Christmas. Mistakes happen, especially when someone's as excited as Jamie. Let's not make a big deal of it." Lucy huffed but said nothing more. Jamie shuffled his feet, his guilt written all over his face. "I'll make it up to you, Lucy," he said. I'll help you decorate the tree later. Or I can give you some of my chocolates from Christmas." Lucy softened at his earnestness. "Fine," she muttered. "Just don't touch anything else, okay?" That evening, Mary surprised the kids with a second advent calendar she'd picked up on her way home from work. "Only one door a day," she warned Jamie with a pointed look. This time, Jamie vowed to be patient. The lesson was learned, and peace was restored for now. As the Smith children returned to their daily routine, Mary was busy hatching a plan to make this Christmas extra special. She had always loved Christmas, not just for the presents but for the small traditions that brought her family closer. This year, she decided to revive one of her childhood memories, crafting handmade decorations with her children. It began one evening after dinner. The dishes were washed, the tea was brewed, and the children were gathered around the dining table for what they assumed would be a typical homework session. Instead, Mary appeared with a large box brimming with supplies, glitter, colored paper, ribbons, scissors, and glue. "What's all this for?" Lucy asked, her curiosity piqued as she fingered a spool of silver ribbon. "We're going to make decorations," Mary announced, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "When I was your age, my brothers and I used to make our own Christmas ornaments. It's a family tradition I think we should bring back." Sam raised an eyebrow. "You mean like arts and crafts?" "Exactly," Mary replied, ignoring his skeptical tone. "It's fun, and it makes the house feel even more festive." Jamie, however, was immediately on board. "Can I make a star for the tree? A really big one?" "Of course, Jamie," Mary said with a smile. "We'll need a star that's bigger than last year's." Tom, peeking in from the living room, chuckled. "I'll leave you all to it. Someone has to supervise the football match." Mary rolled her eyes but said nothing as she began doling out supplies. Each child was assigned a task. Jamie would work on the star, Sam was in charge of garlands, and Lucy, ever the perfectionist, was tasked with creating intricate paper snowflakes. For a while, the room was filled with quiet concentration. Jamie's fingers were soon covered in glue and glitter as he proudly worked on his star. "It's going to be the best star ever," he declared, holding up his half-finished creation, which was slightly crooked but undeniably charming. Sam, meanwhile, was trying to figure out how to link his paper garland together without it falling apart. "This glue isn't strong enough," he muttered, glaring at the glue stick. "You're just not using it right," Lucy said without looking up from her own project. Her snowflakes were turning out beautifully, each one more detailed than the last. She had a knack for precision that her siblings could only admire or resent, depending on their mood. As the hours ticked by, the dining table became a glittering mess. Ribbons were strewn everywhere, scraps of paper littered the floor, and Jamie managed to glue his sleeve to the tablecloth. Mary, however, didn't seem to mind. She was thrilled to see her children working together, their laughter and occasional bickering filling the house with warmth. When the decorations were finally complete, the Smiths stepped back to admire their handiwork. The garlands hung across the walls, the snowflakes dangled from the windows, and Jamie's star, slightly wonky but sparkling with glitter, was propped against the mantel. "It's perfect," Mary said softly, her heart full. "Perfectly messy," Tom joked from the doorway, earning a playful glare from his wife. As the family settled down for the evening, sipping cocoa and basking in the glow of their creations, Jamie leaned over to his mom and whispered, "I think this is the best Christmas ever." Mary smiled, pulling him close. "It's only just begun, sweetheart." A week into December, the Smith family prepared for one of their favorite annual traditions, the town's Christmas tree lighting ceremony. It was a much-anticipated event that brought the entire community together. The streets would be lined with glowing lanterns, and the town square would transform into a winter wonderland. "Are we ready?" Mary called from the living room as she bundled Jamie into his thick woolen scarf. He squirmed, tugging at the ends. "Mom, it's too tight." "It's cold out there," Mary said firmly, adjusting his hat for good measure. "You'll thank me later." Lucy and Sam were already waiting by the door, wrapped in their coats and mittens. Tom emerged from the kitchen, armed with a thermos of hot chocolate. "Everyone ready? Let's go before we miss the countdown." The Smiths stepped out into the frosty evening, their breaths puffing in the cold air. The streets glowed with festive lights strung between lampposts, and the faint sound of carolers drifted through the neighborhood. Jamie skipped ahead, his excitement barely contained. "Do you think the tree will be bigger than last year?" "Probably," Lucy replied, quickening her pace to keep up with him. They always try to outdo themselves. When they reached the town square, it was already buzzing with activity. Stalls selling hot chestnuts and mulled cider lined the cobblestone paths, their scents mingling in the crisp air. Children ran about, clutching candy canes, while parents chatted and laughed. In the center of it all stood the massive Christmas tree, its unlit branches stretching toward the starry sky. Jamie's eyes widened as he took it all in. "It's huge." "It is," Sam agreed, though his attention was quickly drawn to the stall selling roasted marshmallows. "Mom, can we—" After the tree lighting, Mary interrupted with a knowing smile. "Let's find a good spot first." The family weaved through the crowd, eventually settling near the edge of the square, where they had a clear view of the tree. As the clock ticked closer to the lighting ceremony, the mayor stepped onto a small stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice amplified over the chatter of the crowd. "Welcome to our annual Christmas tree lighting. We're thrilled to see so many of you here tonight." Cheers erupted, and Jamie tugged at Mary's sleeve. "How much longer?" "Just a few minutes," Mary whispered, smiling at his impatience. The mayor continued, her speech filled with holiday cheer and gratitude for the community. Finally, she raised her hand. "Now, let's start the countdown." The crowd joined in enthusiastically. 10, 9, 8. Jamie's voice was the loudest, echoing through the square. As the countdown reached 1, the tree burst to life in a dazzling display of golden lights and sparkling ornaments. The crowd erupted in applause, and Jamie stood frozen, his face lit up with wonder. "It's magical," he whispered. Lucy nodded, her usual sarcasm replaced by quiet awe. "It really is." The family spent the rest of the evening soaking in the festive atmosphere. Jamie got his roasted marshmallow, Lucy and Sam sipped hot chocolate from Tom's thermos, and Mary captured the moment in her heart, knowing it was a memory they'd cherish forever. The Smith household was alive with the warm scent of cinnamon, nutmeg, and freshly baked cookies. It was officially baking day, a cherished family tradition in which everyone participated, or tried to at least. Mary had spent the morning preparing ingredients, while the children eagerly hovered in the kitchen, waiting to dive into the chaos. "All right," Mary said, tying her apron tightly. "We're making gingerbread men, mince pies, and sugar cookies today. Everyone has a job. Can I decorate the gingerbread men?" Lucy asked, already eyeing the colorful sprinkles and tubes of icing. "I'll roll out the dough," Sam offered, puffing out his chest. He liked tasks that made him feel important. "What about me?" Jamie piped up, standing on tiptoes to see over the counter. "You're on mixing duty," Mary said with a smile, handing him a wooden spoon that was almost as big as he was. "But only if you promise not to eat the batter." "I promise," Jamie said, though the mischievous glint in his eye suggested otherwise. Tom wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the delicious aroma. "Need an extra hand?" "You can supervise," Mary replied, "and keep the chaos to a minimum." The baking began smoothly enough. Sam rolled out the dough with surprising skill, though he occasionally used a bit too much flour, leaving a fine dusting across the countertop. Lucy meticulously decorated the first batch of gingerbread men, giving each one a unique personality. Jamie, meanwhile, stirred the batter with such enthusiasm that flour puffed into the air, covering his face like a ghostly mask. "Jamie," Lucy scolded, holding up a gingerbread man with half its icing smudged from the flour explosion. "Be careful." "Sorry," Jamie giggled, wiping his face with the back of his hand, which only smeared the flour further. Mary moved between them like a seasoned referee, offering gentle corrections and words of encouragement. "Sam, don't roll the dough too thin." "Lucy, save some sprinkles for the other cookies." "Jamie, try stirring a little slower." Despite her efforts, the kitchen quickly descended into chaos. Jamie accidentally knocked over a bag of sugar, sending it cascading onto the floor. Sam, distracted by his brother's mishap, pressed the cookie cutters too hard, causing the dough to stick to the counter. Lucy let out a dramatic sigh as her carefully arranged icing slid off a gingerbread man's arm. Tom chuckled from the corner, sipping his tea. "Looks like a war zone in here." "It's controlled chaos," Mary replied with a tired smile, though she couldn't help but laugh when Jamie slipped on the sugar and landed with a soft oof on the floor. By the end of the afternoon, the kitchen was a mess. The counters were sticky with dough, the floor sparkled with sugar, and everyone was dusted in flour. But the smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air, and the laughter that echoed through the house made it all worthwhile. As the family gathered around the table to taste their creations, Lucy bit into a gingerbread man and wrinkled her nose. "This one's a little burnt. It adds character," Tom said, popping a slightly overcooked cookie into his mouth. Jamie giggled, crumbs falling onto his lap. "It's the best Christmas baking day ever," Jamie declared, his face lighting up with joy. Mary smiled, looking around at her flour-covered family. "It might not be perfect," she said, "but it's ours." And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family and the imperfect sweetness of their creations, it truly felt like Christmas. The next morning, the Smith children were bundled into their warmest coats for a special outing. Tom had announced that they would be visiting Grandpa George's workshop, a place filled with mystery and excitement. Grandpa George, Tom's father, was a retired carpenter and had a knack for creating beautiful, intricate wooden toys. Every Christmas, he surprised the grandchildren with something handmade, and the visit to his workshop was one of the highlights of the season. As the family arrived at Grandpa's cozy cottage on the outskirts of town, the children bounded out of the car, their boots crunching on the icy driveway. Jamie raced ahead, knocking on the door with unrestrained enthusiasm. The door creaked open, and there stood Grandpa George, a tall man with a kind face, his white beard giving him a Santa-like appearance. "Ah, my favorite troublemakers!" Grandpa boomed, his voice warm and welcoming. Come in, you'll catch your death out there." The children hurried inside, shedding their coats and scarves, as they were enveloped by the comforting smell of wood shavings and freshly brewed tea. Grandpa's workshop was attached to the house, and as soon as he mentioned the word toys, Jamie practically dragged him toward it. "Patience, young man." Grandpa chuckled. "Let's have some tea first." After a brief chat over tea and biscuits, during which Grandpa told stories of Christmases past, he led the family into his workshop. The room was a wonderland of creativity. Wooden tools hung neatly on the walls, jars of nails and screws lined the shelves, and a half-finished rocking horse stood proudly in the corner. "Wow," Sam whispered, running his hand over the smooth surface of the rocking horse. "You made this?" "Indeed I did," Grandpa said with a wink. "But that's for someone else. I've got something special for each of you, too." The children's eyes lit up as Grandpa pulled a cloth off a workbench, revealing a collection of handcrafted gifts. There was a beautifully carved jewelry box for Lucy, its lid adorned with delicate floral designs. For Sam, there was a model airplane complete with tiny details that made it look almost real. And for Jamie, Grandpa presented a wooden puzzle box, promising it contained a surprise once solved. "Wow, Grandpa, this is amazing," Lucy exclaimed, cradling the jewelry box as though it were made of glass. Jamie was already turning the puzzle box in his hands, trying to figure out the mechanism. "What's inside?" he asked, his curiosity barely contained. "That's for you to discover," Grandpa said with a mysterious smile. "But no peeking until you solve it." The rest of the afternoon was spent exploring the workshop, listening to Grandpa's stories, and marveling at his craftsmanship. The children's laughter filled the space, mixing with the hum of the wood stove and the faint scent of sawdust. As the sun began to set, Mary called out, "Time to head home, kids. Say thank you to Grandpa." "Thank you, Grandpa," the children chorused, hugging him tightly. As they drove back home, Jamie clutched his puzzle box, determined to unlock its secret. Lucy admired her jewelry box, already imagining what treasure she'd store inside. Sam gazed out the window, inspired by the craftsmanship of his new airplane. That night, as the family settled in, Tom turned to Mary and said, "Dad's workshop always feels like stepping into another world." Mary nodded, watching her children examine their gifts with awe. "It's not just the workshop. It's the love he puts into everything he makes." And with that thought, the Smiths drifted off to sleep, their hearts full of gratitude for a day filled with wonder. The days leading up to Christmas always brought an air of mystery, but this year, something unusual was happening in the Smith household. Strange packages had begun arriving at the front door. They were large, wrapped in brown paper and addressed to Tom or Mary, never the children. This, of course, only fueled the siblings' curiosity. The first package arrived early on a frosty morning. Lucy spotted the delivery man through the living room window as he heaved the box onto the porch. "Mom," she called, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and suspicion. "There's a big box outside." Mary hurried to the door, her expression unreadable as she signed for the package. The children gathered around like detectives on the brink of solving a case. "What is it?" Jamie asked, craning his neck to get a better look. "Just something for Christmas," Mary replied, smiling cryptically as she moved the box to the hallway. "Nothing you need to worry about." But that only made them more curious. Over the next few days, more packages arrived. Some were long and narrow, others small and cube-shaped. But all were whisked away by Mary or Tom before the children could peek inside. Jamie was the most vocal about the growing mystery. "Do you think it's for us?" he asked one evening as the family gathered for dinner. "Probably socks," Sam joked, earning a glare from Jamie. Lucy, however, had a theory. "It's not just socks. They're hiding something big this year. I bet it's something amazing." Tom chuckled from the head of the table. "You kids are way too nosy. You'll find out soon enough on Christmas morning." "But that's so far away." Jamie groaned, slumping in his chair. "What if we just peek?" "No peeking," Mary said firmly. "You'll ruin the surprise." Despite their parents' warnings, the children couldn't resist trying to piece together the puzzle. Lucy, being the eldest, devised a plan. "We'll take turns keeping watch," she whispered to her brothers one evening. "If Mum or Dad leaves a package out, we'll get a closer look." Sam rolled his eyes. "You're acting like it's a spy mission." "It is," Lucy insisted. "And we're the spies." That night, Jamie stayed up later than usual, hiding behind the banister as he watched Mary carry a small package into her bedroom. He squinted, trying to make out the label, but it was too dark. "I think it's a toy," he reported to his siblings the next morning. Or maybe chocolates. Chocolates don't come in boxes that big, Lucy said, shaking her head. It's got to be something else. Their speculation continued for days, each child coming up with wilder theories. But Mary and Tom remained tight-lipped, clearly enjoying their children's growing anticipation. As Christmas inched closer, Jamie finally sighed in resignation. I guess we'll just have to wait. Sam smirked. Looks like the little spy is giving up. I'm not giving up, Jamie said with a pout. I'm just saving my energy for Christmas morning. And so, mystery lingered, adding an extra layer of excitement to the already magical season. As the countdown to Christmas continued, the Smith children found themselves preparing for another festive tradition, the church Christmas pageant. Every year, the local church hosted a nativity play, and all the children in the community participated. Lucy, being the oldest and most responsible, was cast as Mary, a role she had proudly accepted. Sam, much to his dismay, was given the role of a shepherd. Jamie, the youngest and most enthusiastic, was thrilled to be playing an angel complete with a shiny tinsel halo. The day of the first rehearsal was chaotic from the start. Mary was busy adjusting Jamie's costume, while Tom attempted to pin a shepherd's cloak onto Sam, who grumbled the entire time. Why can't I be one of the wise men? He asked, fidgeting with the itchy fabric. At least they get cool hats? Because the wise men roles were already taken, Mary replied, tightening Jamie's halo. Now stop complaining and hold your staff properly. Jamie, meanwhile, was bouncing with excitement. Do I get a fly? Angels can fly, right? Lucy rolled her eyes. You're not flying, Jamie. Just try to remember your lines. At the church, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Children ran around in various states of costume, their parents attempting to herd them into their places. The director, Mrs. Beecham, clapped her hands for attention. Quiet down, everyone. Let's start from the top. The rehearsal began with Lucy gracefully delivering her lines as Mary, cradling a baby doll that represented the infant Jesus. She was confident and poised, earning nods of approval from Mrs. Beecham. Sam, however, struggled to remember his lines. What do shepherds even say? He muttered, staring at the script in his hands. You're supposed to talk about the angels appearing to you, Lucy whispered, nudging him. Just read it. When it was Jamie's turn, he stepped forward, his halo slipping slightly to one side. He opened his mouth and froze. The entire church went silent, waiting for his speech. Jamie began, looking around nervously. Glory to, peace on. Wait, what do I say again? Mrs. Beecham sighed but smiled kindly. Glory to God in the highest and on earth, peace and goodwill to all people. Jamie repeated the line, his voice growing stronger with each word. By the end, he was practically shouting, peace and goodwill to all people. The congregation of parents and children erupted into applause, and Jamie beamed with pride. I did it, he whispered loudly to Sam. You're supposed to do it without shouting, Sam replied, rolling his eyes, though he couldn't hide his grin. The rehearsal ended with a chaotic run-through of the final scene, during which one of the wise men tripped over his robe and knocked over a cardboard stable. Despite the mishaps, Mrs. Beecham declared the rehearsal a success. As the Smith family walked home under the glow of Christmas lights, Jamie skipped ahead, reciting his lines over and over. Glory to God in the highest. Lucy smiled, adjusting her scarf against the cold. He's going to steal the show. Good, Mary said, her voice filled with pride. Because that's what Christmas is all about, bringing joy. Sam, still clutching his shepherd staff, muttered, Next year, I'm definitely being a wise man. The family laughed, their hearts warm despite the chilly December air, knowing that the pageant would be a highlight of their Christmas season. Lucy had always been the curious one. While her younger siblings were content with dreaming of what Santa might bring, Lucy preferred to investigate. This year, with the mysterious packages piling up and her parents giving nothing away, she decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. It started one quiet evening after dinner. Mary and Tom were in the living room, enjoying a cup of tea by the fire, while Sam and Jamie were busy playing a board game on the carpet. Lucy slipped upstairs, her heart pounding as she tiptoed toward her parents' bedroom. She knew the rule, no one was allowed in without permission. But curiosity had taken hold, and she couldn't resist. She carefully turned the doorknob and peeked inside. The room was dark, but moonlight streamed through the window, casting a silvery glow. There, in the corner, was a stack of the mysterious packages, partially hidden by a blanket. Lucy's heart raced as she crept closer. She knelt down and lifted the corner of the blanket, revealing the labels on the boxes. The first one read, "To Jamie, from Santa." Her eyes widened. This was proof that the packages were for them. She scanned the others quickly. There were labels for Sam, Jamie, and even herself. Her fingers itched to peel back the tape on one of the boxes. What could be inside? A new book? Art supplies? Something even better? Just as she reached for the box labeled "To Lucy," she heard footsteps on the stairs. Panic surged through her as she hurriedly replaced the blanket and darted into the closet, closing the door just in time. The bedroom door creaked open, and she held her breath. It was Mary. Lucy could hear her humming softly as she moved around the room. There was the sound of shuffling paper. Then a pause. Mary murmured to herself. "Thought I heard something." Lucy's heart thudded in her chest. She pressed herself further into the closet, her palms sweaty. "Please don't open the door," she thought. "Please don't open it." After what felt like an eternity, Mary left the room, closing the door behind her. Lucy waited a few moments before quietly slipping out of the closet and sneaking back to her own room. Her heart was still racing as she closed the door and leaned against it. "What were you doing upstairs?" Sam's voice startled her. He was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, with Jamie peeking out from behind him. "Nothing," Lucy said quickly, her cheeks flushing. "I was getting my book." Sam narrowed his eyes. "Mum said we're not supposed to go in there." "I wasn't in there," Lucy lied, though her voice lacked conviction. Jamie tilted his head, clearly suspicious, but too distracted by his own excitement to press further. Lucy climbed into bed that night, still thinking about the packages. Though she hadn't opened one, she felt like she'd come close to discovering the truth. But as she drifted off to sleep, guilt began to creep in. Perhaps it was better to wait after all. The magic of Christmas wasn't just in knowing, it was in the surprise. The Smith family woke to a world blanketed in white. Overnight, a fierce snowstorm had transformed the town into a winter wonderland. Thick layers of snow covered the streets' rooftops and the family's car, making any plans to go out for the day impossible. Jamie was the first to notice. He stood at the window, his nose pressed against the cold glass. "It's so much snow," he exclaimed, his voice carrying through the house. "Do you think school's canceled?" Sam, still groggy from sleep, trudged into the living room. "School's already closed for the holidays, genius." "Good," Jamie replied cheerfully. "That means we can stay home and play." Mary walked in, tying her robe tightly. She glanced out the window and sighed. "Well, it looks like we're snowed in. No errands today." Tom, who had just come down the stairs, nodded in agreement. "The roads are completely buried. We'll have to dig ourselves out later." Lucy appeared moments later, clutching a book and looking annoyed. "Great. Stuck in the house all day." Mary clapped her hands together, determined to make the best of the situation. "Let's turn this into a family day. We'll have fun inside. Who's up for board games?" The children groaned in unison. "Board games are boring," Sam said, slumping onto the couch. "Not if we make it interesting," Tom chimed in with a mischievous grin. "Winner gets to pick dessert tonight." That perked them up. Within minutes, the family gathered around the dining table and the board game marathon began. Jamie insisted on playing snakes and ladders first, a game that always led to chaos. He squealed with delight every time he climbed a ladder and pouted dramatically whenever he slid down a snake. "Watch out, Jamie," Sam teased, rolling the dice. "You're about to lose." "Not if I get a 6. Jamie countered, shaking the dice fervently before rolling them onto the board. He got a 1 and groaned. "Not fair." Lucy won the first round, much to Jamie's disappointment. "You cheated," he muttered, crossing his arms. "I didn't cheat," Lucy said, rolling her eyes. "I'm just better at it than you." After snakes and ladders came Monopoly, which dragged on far longer than anyone anticipated. Tom bought every property he landed on, much to the frustration of the kids, while Mary pretended to go bankrupt early to avoid playing. "I'll trade you Park Lane for Mayfair," Sam offered Tom, trying to strategize. "Not a chance," Tom said with a laugh. "This is a cutthroat business, son." The game ended with Jamie flipping the board in frustration when he landed on Tom's heavily mortgaged properties for the third time. "This game is dumb," he declared, storming off, only to return moments later with a plate of cookies. As the day wore on, the family moved to the living room for an impromptu movie marathon. They piled onto the couch with blankets, mugs of hot chocolate in hand. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, the house was filled with warmth, laughter, and the unmistakable comfort of togetherness. By the time the storm had settled, the Smiths were tucked into bed, their hearts full from a day spent making memories. Lucy, reflecting on the day, realized that being snowed in wasn't so bad after all. Sometimes, the best Christmas moments were the ones spent simply enjoying each other's company. As the snowstorm cleared, the Smith family woke to a bright, icy morning. The sunlight glistened on the thick snow outside, and Jamie was already talking excitedly about his Christmas list. The countdown to Christmas Day had reached single digits, and the excitement in the house was palpable. Over breakfast, Jamie brought up his favorite topic, Ghostbusters. "I can't wait to open my presents," he said, his face glowing with anticipation. "I just know Santa's bringing me the Ecto, one car, and all 4 Ghostbusters figures." Lucy glanced up from her cereal, raising an eyebrow. "All 4? That's pretty specific." "Well, yeah," Jamie replied confidently. "I wrote it in my letter. Santa knows what I want." Sam, never one to resist teasing his younger brother, smirked. "What if he only brings 3? Or forgets the car?" Jamie's face fell. "He won't forget. He's Santa." Mary, sensing Jamie's growing concern, chimed in. "Don't listen to your brother, Jamie. Santa knows what he's doing. He's been delivering gifts for a long time, but what if he doesn't?" Jamie asked, his voice quieter now. "What if I don't get all of them?" Tom chuckled from the head of the table. "If Santa misses one, you can always use your Christmas money to buy it later. Don't worry, champ." The idea seemed to calm Jamie down, but Lucy couldn't help but notice the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Later that day, while the others were busy building a snow fort outside, Jamie sat in the living room with his toys. He carefully arranged his existing action figures on the coffee table, a collection of superheroes, soldiers, and cars. But it wasn't enough to distract him. 3 Ghostbusters would be okay, he muttered to himself, fiddling with a plastic robot. But it wouldn't be the same without all 4. Meanwhile, Mary was upstairs in her room, carefully going through the wrapped presents. She checked each tag and box, ensuring everything was accounted for. As she reached the gifts intended for Jamie, she froze. Her heart sank as she realized something was missing. Among the Ghostbusters-themed items, there were only 3 figures. The 4th, the one Jamie had been so excited about, wasn't there. "Oh, no," she whispered, quickly scanning the room. She retraced her steps mentally, trying to remember if she had ordered it. "I must have forgotten." Tom found her a moment later, still holding the gifts with a panicked look on her face. "What's wrong?" "I forgot one of Jamie's Ghostbusters figures," Mary said, her voice filled with worry. "He's been talking about them for weeks. What are we going to do?" Tom frowned, then gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll figure something out. We've still got time." But Mary wasn't convinced. Jamie's face flashed in her mind, his wide, hopeful eyes, and the way he talked about Christmas with so much excitement. She knew how much those gifts meant to him, and she couldn't bear to see him disappointed. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Mary couldn't shake the thought of the missing figure. She glanced at Jamie, who was chattering away about his plans to play with the Ghostbusters toys after Christmas. "It'll all work out," Tom whispered to her as he placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. But Mary wasn't so sure. With only a few days left until Christmas, she would need to come up with a plan and fast. Christmas Eve arrived with a sense of both excitement and urgency in the Smith household. The day had been spent baking, wrapping, and making last-minute preparations for the big day. But as evening fell, the family turned their attention to one of their most cherished traditions, the Christmas Eve candlelight service at the local church. Mary, still preoccupied with the missing Ghostbuster figure, made sure everything was perfect before they left. She smoothed Jamie's hair, straightened Lucy's scarf, and reminded Sam, twice, to wear his proper coat. Tom was already warming up the car as the children bundled themselves against the cold. The drive to the church was quiet, save for Jamie's excited chatter about the presents he was sure Santa would deliver that night. Mary's heart twinged every time he mentioned the Ghostbusters, but she forced a smile, determined not to let her worry dampen the festive mood. The church was a beacon of warmth and light in the frosty evening. Candles flickered in every window, and the sound of carols drifted into the night. Inside, the congregation buzzed with excitement as families greeted one another and took their seats. The Smiths settled into a pew near the front, Jamie bouncing slightly in his seat. "Do you think Santa's already flying over the world?" he whispered to Lucy, who shushed him gently. "Probably," she replied with a grin, "but only if all the kids are asleep." As the service began, the church was filled with a soft glow of candlelight. The choir sang traditional carols, their voices soaring through the vaulted ceilings. Jamie's eyes were wide with wonder as the congregation joined in for Silent Night, each person holding a small, flickering candle. Mary, seated between her children, found herself relaxing for the first time all day. The beauty of the service, the warmth of her family, and the spirit of Christmas surrounded her, soothing her worry. She glanced at Jamie, whose face was lit by the golden light, his expression filled with awe. She resolved to fix the missing Ghostbuster problem, no matter what it took. After the service, the family lingered outside the church to chat with neighbors and friends. Snow began to fall gently, and the children caught flakes on their tongues while the adults exchanged holiday greetings. "Ready to head home?" Tom asked, tucking his scarf tightly around his neck. "Not yet," Jamie said, spinning in the snow. "I want to stay a little longer." Mary knelt down and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Santa won't stop if you're still awake, you know." Jamie gasped and immediately dashed toward the car. "We have to go now." The family laughed as they climbed into the car and drove home. Once inside, the children prepared for bed under strict instructions not to wake their parents before 8 o'clock the next morning. Jamie carefully placed a plate of cookies and a glass of milk by the fireplace for Santa, along with a handwritten note. "Thank you for everything, Santa," it read in Jamie's uneven handwriting. "I hope you like the cookies." Mary tucked him in a few minutes later, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered. "Good night, Mom," he replied sleepily. "Do you think Santa knows I've been good?" "He knows," she said, kissing his forehead. "Now go to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be magical." As she closed his door, Mary's determination solidified. She had one last chance to fix the missing Ghostbuster, and she wouldn't let Jamie down. The Smith household was quiet as the clock struck midnight. Snow gently fell outside, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, the warm glow of Christmas lights illuminated the living room, where a plate of cookies and a glass of milk sat waiting by the fireplace. Jamie had insisted they leave plenty of treats for Santa, even adding a small carrot for the reindeer. Upstairs, however, the children were far from asleep. Jamie lay in bed, his wide eyes fixed on the ceiling. He had tried everything to fall asleep, counting sheep, imagining Santa's sleigh, and even reciting his lines from the Christmas pageant, but excitement buzzed through him like electricity. How could he possibly sleep when Santa was out there delivering presents? Across the room, Sam stirred. "Jamie, stop wiggling," he grumbled. "I can't help it," Jamie whispered back. "Do you think Santa's already been here?" "No," Sam replied, turning over in his bed. "And he won't come if you don't fall asleep. That's the rule." Jamie sighed, pulling the blanket up to his chin. He lay still for a moment before whispering, "What do you think he's bringing me?" Sam groaned. "The same thing you've been talking about all month. Ghostbusters." Jamie smiled, his excitement bubbling over again. "Yeah, but what if—" "Go to sleep, Jamie," Sam interrupted, his voice stern but laced with humor. "Or I'll tell Sandy you're awake." In the room next door, Lucy was having her own trouble falling asleep. She had spent the evening replaying the moment she peeked at the packages in her parents' room. She had seen her name on one of the boxes, but the mystery of what was inside was driving her crazy. She knew she shouldn't have snooped, but curiosity tugged at her like a loose thread. As she turned onto her side, she could hear the faint creak of footsteps coming from downstairs. Her ears perked up. Was it Santa? She sat up in bed, straining to hear. The creaks grew louder, followed by the soft rustle of paper. Lucy's heart raced. Could it really be him? Unable to resist, she crept out of bed and tiptoed to her door. Peeking into the hallway, she saw a sliver of light spilling from the staircase. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to run down and catch Santa in the act, but the other part knew it would ruin the magic. Meanwhile, downstairs, Mary and Tom were busy arranging the presents under the tree. Mary carefully placed the packages she had double-checked earlier, her mind still racing about the missing Ghostbuster figure. Tom glanced at her, noticing her furrowed brow. "Stop worrying," he whispered, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Jamie won't even notice." Mary shook her head. "He will. He's been talking about it nonstop. I'll figure something out." Tom sighed but smiled. "That's what I love about you. You always find a way." As the clock ticked closer to 1 a.m., the house finally fell into silence. Lucy slipped back into bed, her curiosity unsatisfied, but her excitement growing for the morning. Jamie, worn out from anticipation, drifted off to sleep, dreaming of sleigh bells and toys. Downstairs, the living room sparkled with the magic of Christmas. The tree stood tall, its ornaments catching the soft glow of the lights, and beneath it, the carefully arranged presents waited to bring joy to the Smith children in just a few hours. Christmas morning arrived with an air of excitement that seemed to radiate through the entire house. The soft golden light of dawn filtered through the frosted windows, and the snow outside sparkled like diamonds. Jamie was the first to wake up as expected. His internal clock, finely tuned to Christmas anticipation, had him wide-eyed and ready before 6. "Sam! Lucy! Wake up!" Jamie hissed loudly, bouncing on the edge of his bed. "Go back to sleep, Jamie," Sam mumbled, burying his head under his pillow. "It's Christmas. We have to open presents." Jamie persisted, tugging on Sam's blanket. Lucy groaned from her room, overhearing the commotion. Lucy sighed, she padded into their room beside him on the bed, her hair let's get ready quietly. "Jamie, and then we can all head downstairs together. We can't wake Mom and Dad before 8. It's only 2 hours. You know the rule. 2 Jamie hours pouted, is forever," crossing his arms, but he reluctantly agreed. "But I've been waiting forever." By 7:58, Jamie was pacing the hallway, his excitement bubbling over. Lucy and Sam emerged, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. The trio stood outside their parents' bedroom door, watching the clock tick the final seconds to 8. As soon as it struck, Jamie burst into the room. "It's 8! It's time!" Tom groaned, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. "Merry Christmas to you too, Jamie." Mary chuckled, throwing on a robe. All right, let's head downstairs." The children practically sprinted down the stairs, stopping just short of the closed living room door. As always, the rule was they couldn't enter until both parents were ready. Jamie jiggled the handle impatiently, staring at the door like it held the answers to the universe. Finally, Tom and Mary arrived. But just as Jamie reached for the doorknob, Tom held up a hand. "Wait!" Jamie froze, his hand hovering. "What? Why?" "I need a cup of tea first," Tom said, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. The collective groan from the children could have shaken the walls. "No!" Jamie cried, stomping his foot. "We've been waiting all night." "Rules are rules," Tom said, shrugging dramatically. "Tea first, presents second." Lucy and Sam exchanged exasperated looks, but followed their parents into the kitchen. Jamie trudged after them, muttering about how tea was ruining Christmas. Mary smiled as she set the kettle on, pulling mugs from the cupboard. "Do you think Santa drinks tea before delivering presents?" Jamie asked, glaring at the steaming kettle. "Probably," Mary replied with a grin. "It's what keeps him going." After what felt like an eternity to Jamie but was only a few minutes, the tea was ready. Tom took an exaggerated sip, smacking his lips. "Ah, perfect! Now we're ready." Jamie shot to the living room door, throwing it open. The sight before him made him freeze in awe. The tree sparkled with lights, and beneath it was a mountain of presents, each one wrapped in bright paper and adorned with ribbons. "It's beautiful," Lucy whispered, her earlier annoyance melting away. Jamie's face lit up as he spotted the gift bags with their names. "Let's open them," he shouted, diving toward the pile. Finally, The Smith family was together in their happiest moment, the living room filled with laughter, torn wrapping paper, and the magic of Christmas. The living room exploded with excitement as the Smith children tore into their gifts. Wrapping paper flew through the air, ribbons unraveled, and the sounds of delighted exclamations filled the space. The morning felt like the culmination of weeks of anticipation, and the joy was palpable. Jamie was the loudest of them all. "This one's for me," he shouted, tugging a large box toward himself. The tag read, "To Jamie. From Santa. Open it already?" Sam urged, sitting cross-legged with a pile of gifts surrounding him. Jamie ripped off the paper to reveal the Ghostbusters Ecto, one car, complete with intricate decals and flashing lights. He let out an ear-piercing squeal of delight. "It's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted." Tom, sipping his tea from the couch, chuckled. "Looks like Santa got it right." Jamie eagerly grabbed another package, his small hands trembling with excitement. As he peeled back the wrapping, he found one of the Ghostbuster action figures. "It's Peter Venkman," he cried, holding it up triumphantly. "Nice," Lucy said, smiling at her brother's enthusiasm. She was unwrapping her own gift, a beautiful set of art supplies, complete with watercolor paints and sketchbooks. "These are amazing. Thank you, Mum and Dad." Sam, meanwhile, had just opened a sleek new stereo. His eyes widened as he ran his fingers over the shiny black buttons. "This is so cool. I can finally play my tapes without using Dad's old player." "Just don't blow out the speakers," Tom joked, leaning back on the couch. Jamie continued opening his gifts, each one adding to the growing Ghostbusters collection. By the time he reached the last box, he had 3 of the 4 action figures: Peter Venkman, Egon Spengler, and Ray Stantz. He carefully lined them up beside the Ecto, one car, his face glowing with happiness. But as he looked at the figures, a flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Wait, where's Winston?" The room fell quiet for a moment. Mary felt her stomach drop as Jamie's eyes darted toward the pile of open gifts. "They're supposed to be for Ghostbusters," he said softly, his excitement dimming just a little. Lucy, noticing the shift in his tone, quickly tried to distract him. "Maybe he's still on his way, Jamie. You know, Santa has a lot of deliveries to make." Jamie nodded slowly, but the disappointment was clear. He picked up one of the figures and held it tightly. "It's okay. I can still play with these ones." Mary's heart broke at the sight of his forced smile. She exchanged a glance with Tom, who gave her a small nod. They had discussed this the night before and agreed that Mary's backup plan would save the day. "Jamie," Mary said gently, "why don't you help Lucy and Sam clean up some of this wrapping paper? I think I might have forgotten one last gift in the wardrobe." Jamie's face lit up again. "Really? Is it for me?" "It might be," Mary said, winking as she left the room. She returned moments later with a small, neatly wrapped package. "I found this hiding in the back," she said, handing it to Jamie. Jamie's hands shook as he tore into the paper. When the final piece fell away, his face lit up brighter than the Christmas tree. "It's Winston," he screamed, holding the figure aloft like a trophy. The entire family erupted into laughter and cheers as Jamie raced to place Winston beside the other figures. "Now, the team is complete," he declared, already arranging them into a dramatic action scene with the Ecto, one car. Mary leaned back into the couch, relief washing over her. Jamie's joy filled the room, and in that moment, all her worries melted away. "Christmas saved," Tom whispered, nudging her playfully. "Christmas perfect," Mary corrected, watching as her children laughed and played together, the true magic of the holiday shining in their smiles. The living room was a kaleidoscope of torn wrapping paper, ribbons, and smiles. Jamie was fully immersed in his new Ghostbusters set, orchestrating elaborate adventures with the complete team and the Ecto one car. Lucy had already begun sketching with her new art supplies, and Sam was fiddling with his stereo, figuring out how to connect it to his favorite cassette tapes. As the excitement began to settle, Mary glanced at Tom with a knowing smile. There was one more surprise left, a gift that wasn't under the tree. She nodded toward him, and he disappeared upstairs. "Everyone," Mary said, her voice cutting through the chatter, "we've got one last present to share." Jamie looked up from his Ghostbusters setup, his curiosity instantly piqued. Another present? Is it for me? You'll see, Mary said, winking at him. This one's for everyone. Tom returned moments later, carrying a large rectangular box wrapped in shiny gold paper. He placed it gently in the center of the room, and the children immediately gathered around. Go on, Tom said. Open it together. Lucy, Sam, and Jamie exchanged excited glances before tearing into the paper as a team. Inside the box was a brand new family board game set, complete with several classic games like chess, Scrabble, and a brightly colored snakes and ladders board. It's a game set, Lucy exclaimed, lifting the lid to reveal the pieces neatly packed inside. Look at all the games, Sam said, flipping through the instruction booklets. Jamie's excitement bubbled over as he pulled out the snakes and ladders board. Can we play now? Please. Tom laughed. That's the idea. Christmas is about spending time together, and we thought this would be a fun way to do it. Mary added, we figured it's something we can all enjoy, not just today, but any time. The children quickly cleared a space on the carpet and set up the board. Jamie insisted on rolling the dice first, while Sam strategized about which games to try next. Lucy, ever the artist, admired the colorful designs on the game boards and pieces. The first round of snakes and ladders was filled with laughter and light-hearted arguments. Jamie squealed every time he climbed a ladder and groaned dramatically whenever he slid down a snake. Lucy, competitive as always, kept a close eye on everyone's moves, while Sam playfully tried to distract her by humming Christmas carols. As they played, the living room seemed to glow with a sense of togetherness. The earlier frenzy of unwrapping gifts had faded, replaced by the quiet joy of simply being with one another. After several rounds, Jamie sat back with a satisfied sigh. This is the best Christmas ever, he declared, his face flushed with happiness. Tom ruffled his hair. And it's not over yet. We've still got dinner with the grandparents later. Mary leaned back into the couch, watching her children laugh and tease each other. The chaos of the morning had given way to a warm, peaceful rhythm, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude. As the snow continued to fall softly outside, the Smith family spent the rest of the morning playing games, sharing jokes, and enjoying the magic of Christmas together. As the morning faded into the afternoon, the Smith household transitioned from the excitement of presents to the quieter rhythm of preparing for their traditional Christmas Day visit to both sets of grandparents. But Mary still had one lingering thought: how she had nearly forgotten Jamie's beloved fourth Ghostbuster figure. That small mistake had weighed on her for weeks, and she was determined to make the day even more special to make up for it. While the children were busy with their new gifts, Mary quietly slipped into the kitchen and pulled out her secret weapon, a handwritten recipe card for her mother's special Christmas cookies. These cookies had been a staple of her own childhood, and she decided it was time to surprise her children by baking them together. Who wants to help me in the kitchen? Mary called out cheerfully. Jamie immediately popped up, clutching one of his Ghostbusters figures. Me? What are we making? It's a surprise, Mary replied with a grin, but I'll need some extra hands. Lucy, who had been sketching quietly, looked up with interest. Is it something sweet? You'll see, Mary said mysteriously. Now, let's wash our hands and get started. Sam groaned from his spot on the couch. Do I have to? Yes, you do, Mary said firmly, pointing toward the kitchen. It's a family activity. Reluctantly, Sam joined them, and soon the kitchen was bustling with activity. Mary directed each child to a specific task. Jamie measured out the flour, Lucy carefully cracked eggs into the mixing bowl, and Sam, once he got into the spirit of things, eagerly mixed the ingredients together. What's in these cookies? Jamie asked, his hands dusted with flour. Secret family ingredients, Mary replied with a wink. You'll just have to wait and see. As the dough came together, Mary handed out cookie cutters in festive shapes, stars, trees, and snowflakes. Jamie insisted on making a star for Santa, while Lucy focused on perfecting the edges of her snowflakes. Even Sam, who had initially complained, took pride in creating the tallest Christmas tree cookie on the tray. The cookies baked quickly, filling the house with a warm, buttery scent of nostalgia. Jamie sat cross-legged by the oven, staring through the glass. Are they done yet? Almost, Mary said, checking on them. Be patient. Good things take time. When the cookies were finally ready, the family gathered around the table to decorate them. Icing, sprinkles, and edible glitter turned the simple cookies into miniature works of art. Jamie's were colorful but chaotic, Lucy's were intricate and detailed, and Sam's were bold and creative. Once the cookies were done, Mary presented them with a flourish. "These are just like the ones my mum used to make when I was your age," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "They're amazing," Lucy said, taking a bite of her snowflake cookie. "Best cookies ever," Jamie added, his mouth full. Sam nodded in agreement. "You should have made these sooner." Mary smiled, her heart full. Watching her children enjoy the cookies and laugh together made all the stress of the season worth it. She wrapped a few of the cookies in a festive tin to bring to the grandparents' house later, knowing they'd appreciate the thoughtful gesture. As the day unfolded, Mary realized that while gifts and traditions were important, it was the little moments like baking cookies together that made Christmas truly magical. After the kitchen chaos of cookie making and the satisfying reward of their sugary creations, the Smith children returned to their gifts. Jamie, in particular, was still enchanted by his Ghostbusters set. With all 4 figures finally in his possession, he was ready to create his ultimate adventure. "Sam, help me set this up," Jamie shouted, dragging the Ecto-1 car and his Ghostbusters figures to the center of the living room. "I'm busy," Sam replied, fiddling with his new stereo. He'd finally found the perfect cassette tape to test it out, a compilation of 80s hits their dad had given him. "Lucy?" Jamie asked hopefully. Lucy, engrossed in sketching her new art supplies, shook her head. "Not right now, Jamie. I'm working on something." Jamie's shoulders sagged for a moment before determination lit up his face. "Fine, I'll do it myself." He grabbed cushions, boxes, and spare wrapping paper from the earlier chaos to create an elaborate haunted house for his Ghostbusters. "This is the spooky mansion," Jamie explained to himself as he positioned his figures around the car. "Winston, you guard the front. Egon, you go in first to check for ghosts." He moved the figures dramatically, his small hands animating each one with unique voices. "Watch out! There's a ghost in the library," he cried, moving Egon into action. "We'll catch it with the proton pack." Mary watched from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride and amusement. Jamie's imagination was boundless, and she loved seeing him so immersed in his world. She quietly retrieved her camera and snapped a photo of him mid-adventure. "Gotcha, ghost," Jamie declared, slamming an imaginary ghost trap shut. He made the Ecto-1 car zoom across the floor, narrowly avoiding a stack of cushions. "We did it, team," another ghost caught. Lucy looked up from her drawing and smiled. "That looks pretty fun, Jamie." "It is," he replied, his enthusiasm bubbling over. "Want to play?" "Maybe later," Lucy said, though she couldn't hide her grin. Sam, finally done setting up his stereo, walked over and watched for a moment. "You're missing something," he said, gesturing toward Jamie's setup. Jamie frowned. "What do you mean?" "I have everything, my car, my Ghostbusters, the ghost trap." "You need ghosts," Sam said with a smirk. "Here, let me help." He grabbed a few of the empty wrapping paper tubes and tossed them to Jamie. "These can be ghosts. You knock them over when the Ghostbusters catch them." Jamie's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea." He immediately incorporated the makeshift ghosts into his game, creating an even bigger adventure. For the next hour, the 2 brothers worked together, creating increasingly elaborate scenarios. Lucy eventually joined in, sketching the ghosts Jamie described, turning them into colorful, fearsome creatures on paper. As the day went on, the living room became a battlefield of Ghostbusters versus imaginary specters. The sound of Jamie's laughter and Sam's occasional quips filled the house, echoing the joy of Christmas. By the time Tom called everyone to get ready for their visit to the grandparents, Jamie was reluctant to leave his game behind. "Can I bring the Ghostbusters with me?" he asked, clutching the figures to his chest. "You'll have plenty of time to play with them later," Mary assured him. "Let's go make more Christmas memories at Grandma and Grandpa's." Jamie nodded, carefully placing his figures back in their box. "Okay, but the ghosts better not escape while we're gone." As the Smith family bundled up and headed out into the snowy evening, Jamie's excitement hadn't dimmed in the slightest. His Ghostbusters adventure had only just begun, and the day was far from over. Later that Christmas day, after their visit to the grandparents and an overindulgence in mince pies and Christmas pudding, the Smith family returned home, ready to unwind. The house, still glowing with festive lights, felt warm and inviting as they piled inside and shed their coats and scarves. Lucy, clutching her new roller skates, could hardly wait to try them out. They were bright red with sleek orange wheels, a bold statement that immediately made her feel like the coolest kid in the house. As soon as the family settled in, she grabbed her skates and sat down to lace them up. "What are you doing?" Sam asked, eyeing her from the couch where he was fiddling with his stereo. "I'm trying these out," Lucy replied, tightening the laces with a determined tug. "I've waited all day for this." "In here?" Jamie asked, his Ghostbusters figures spread out on the floor in front of him. "Mum's going to freak out if you crash into something." Lucy ignored them, standing up and wobbling slightly as she adjusted to the skates. "I'll be careful," she said, her voice brimming with confidence. "I just need a little space." Mary appeared in the doorway, folding her arms. "Lucy, are you really planning to roller skate in the house?" "I'll stay in the living room," Lucy promised. "Just a quick try. I'll be careful, I swear." Mary sighed but smiled. "All right, but only if you promise not to knock anything over." With permission granted, Lucy took her first tentative steps on the skates. At first, her movements were clumsy, her arms flailing as she tried to find her balance. Jamie giggled from the floor. "You look like a baby deer learning to walk." "Shut up, Jamie," Lucy muttered, though she couldn't help but laugh at herself. After a few wobbly laps around the living room, she started to get the hang of it. Her movements became smoother, more confident. "Look at me," she said, skating in a wide circle. "I'm getting it." Sam looked up from his stereo, smirking. "Try not to fall in the tree." "I won't," Lucy said, her voice daring. She decided to pick up speed, gliding from one end of the room to the other. But as she turned sharply near the couch, her wheels caught on the edge of a rug. She wobbled precariously before crashing into the side table, sending a lamp teetering. "Lucy!" Mary called, rushing into the room. "I'm fine," Lucy said quickly, straightening the lamp before it could fall. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "See, nothing's broken." Jamie burst into laughter. "You almost took out the whole house." Lucy stuck her tongue out at him and carefully skated back to the center of the room. "I'm still learning. Give me a break." Mary shook her head, though her smile remained. "Why don't we take those skates outside tomorrow? It'll be safer." Lucy nodded, unlacing her skates and setting them aside. "Good idea," she admitted, plopping onto the couch beside Sam. Despite her mishap, Lucy couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had finally mastered her new roller skates, well, almost. Tomorrow, she'd show everyone just how good she could be. As the evening wound down, Lucy leaned back, watching her brothers play with their gifts. Christmas Day had been everything she'd hoped for, and it wasn't over yet. As the Christmas evening quieted down, Sam remained glued to his new stereo. He had been itching to test it out properly ever since he unwrapped it earlier in the day. Now that the excitement of presents, games, and family visits had settled, he finally had the time to dive in. He sat cross-legged on the living room floor, unboxing the stereo with reverence. It was sleek and shiny, with black and silver detailing and a set of buttons that practically begged to be pressed. Next to him was a small pile of cassette tapes he'd collected over the years, many of which had once belonged to his dad. Tom, watching from his armchair, chuckled. "I see you've got my old tapes there, Sam." "I'll give them back," Sam replied quickly, though they both knew that wasn't true. "Right," Tom said with a smirk. "Just don't break them. Some of those are classics." Sam grinned as he selected the first tape, a compilation of hits from the 1980s, and slid it into the stereo. The soft click of the cassette locking into place was satisfying. He hit the play button, and after a brief crackle, the room filled with the upbeat rhythm of an old favorite. "Yes," Sam exclaimed, turning the volume up slightly. "It sounds amazing." Jamie, who had been playing with his Ghostbusters figures nearby, looked up. "What's so great about a stereo? You can just listen to music on the TV." Sam gave him a withering look. "It's not the same. This is real music on tape, and the sound is way better. Jamie shrugged, unimpressed, and went back to his game. Lucy, sitting on the couch and sketching, perked up at the music. "What are you playing?" she asked. "Just some of Dad's old stuff," Sam replied, flipping the tape over to the B-side. "Listen to this track, it's awesome." Lucy listened for a moment before nodding. "It's not bad. Better than your usual noise." Sam ignored her teasing and continued fiddling with the stereo settings. He adjusted the bass and treble, experimenting with the sound until it was just right. He even discovered that the stereo had a recording function, which gave him an idea. He grabbed a blank cassette tape from the box and pressed the record button. "Let's make a mixtape," he said to Lucy. "Something for the whole family." Lucy raised an eyebrow. "A mixtape? You mean like pick songs for everyone?" "Yeah," Sam said, scrolling through the tapes. "Something for Mom, something for Dad, and even something for Jamie." Jamie's ears perked up. "What about me? Can you put the Ghostbusters theme on it?" Sam sighed but nodded. "Fine, I'll find it." For the next hour, Sam and Lucy worked together, selecting tracks for their homemade mixtape. They included classic rock songs for Tom, soft ballads for Mary, and, of course, the Ghostbusters theme for Jamie. By the time they were done, the tape was filled with a little something for everyone. "This is actually kind of cool," Lucy admitted as they listened to the finished product. "Of course it is," Sam said, grinning. "I made it." Later, as the family gathered in the living room for their traditional evening movie, Sam proudly played his mixtape during the intermission. Everyone smiled as they heard their favorite tracks, and even Jamie danced around when the Ghostbusters theme came on. "This stereo's the best gift ever," Sam declared as he turned the music down for the movie. Tom gave him a knowing smile. "Told you tapes were classics." As the family settled in for the rest of the evening, Sam leaned back, feeling a sense of accomplishment. His stereo wasn't just a gift, it was the start of something creative, and he couldn't wait to see what he'd make next. The day after Christmas always had its own charm, but for the Smiths, it meant one thing: the grand family Christmas dinner. Mary had been planning it for weeks, a feast that included roasted turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, Brussels sprouts, stuffing, and a variety of desserts. However, as the morning unfolded, it became clear that the journey to get the meal on the table would be anything but smooth. "Lucy, can you peel the potatoes?" Mary asked, handing her the peeler. "And Sam, I need you to set the table." "Why do I have to peel potatoes?" Lucy complained, though she reluctantly took the peeler and sat at the kitchen counter. "Because you're good at it," Mary replied with a distracted smile. "And because I asked." Sam, meanwhile, grumbled as he gathered plates and cutlery from the cabinet. "Do we really need all the stuff? Can't we just eat on the couch like normal?" "It's Christmas dinner, Sam," Mary said firmly, stirring a pot of simmering gravy. "We're doing this properly." Jamie, who had been playing with his Ghostbusters figures, wandered into the kitchen. "What can I do, Mom?" "Stay out of trouble," Mary said, glancing at him over her shoulder. Jamie frowned, crossing his arms. "That's not a job." Tom walked into the chaos, sipping his tea. "Need any help?" he asked cheerfully. "Yes," Mary replied immediately. "Check the turkey. It should have been done by now." Tom opened the oven and frowned. "It's not browning. Did you turn it on properly?" Mary froze, her face draining of color. "Of course, I turned it on properly." She rushed to the oven, realizing to her horror that the dial had been set to the wrong temperature. "Brilliant," she muttered under her breath, adjusting the oven settings. "Now we're behind schedule." "Don't worry," Tom said, patting her shoulder. "I'll take care of it." Meanwhile, Lucy, who had been dutifully peeling potatoes, let out a frustrated groan. "Jamie, stop stealing the potato peels. That's gross." "I'm making a ghost trap," Jamie replied, holding up a contraption made of peels and a colander. "Jamie, out of the kitchen," Mary said sharply, pointing toward the living room. "Go set up your Ghostbusters in there." Reluctantly, Jamie shuffled away, muttering something about unappreciated creativity. As the chaos in the kitchen continued, Sam accidentally dropped a plate, which shattered on the floor. "Oops." "Sam!" Mary cried, spinning around. "Be careful." "Sorry," Sam said sheepishly, quickly grabbing a broom. By the time the turkey was finally done and the sides were prepared, the kitchen looked like a battlefield. Mary stood in the middle of it all, flour on her apron and gravy splattered on her sleeves, her hair slightly disheveled. "Right," she said, taking a deep breath. "Let's get this on the table." The family gathered around the dining table, which was somehow miraculously set despite Sam's earlier mishap. The food was placed before them, steaming and smelling delicious. Mary collapsed into her chair with a sigh of relief. "This looks amazing, Mum," Lucy said, her earlier complaints forgotten as she reached for the mashed potatoes. "Yeah," Sam added, grinning. "Best Christmas dinner ever." Even Jamie, who was still slightly miffed about being banished from the kitchen, smiled as he piled his plate high with turkey and stuffing. "It's really good, Mum." Mary smiled, her exhaustion melting away as she looked at her family enjoying the meal. "Thanks, everyone. It was a team effort, kind of." Tom raised his glass of sparkling cider. "To another unforgettable Smith family Christmas." They all raised their glasses, laughing as they clinked them together. Despite the chaos, the meal was perfect in its imperfection, a true Smith family tradition. The day after Christmas was a time for more family traditions. For the Smiths, it meant piling into the car and visiting both sets of grandparents, a much-anticipated part of the holiday season. The visits were filled with food, laughter, and, of course, more presents. The morning began with a flurry of activity as Mary ushered everyone out the door. "Jamie, get your coat." "Lucy, grab the tin of cookies we made for Grandma." "Sam, help your dad load the gifts into the car." "I'm coming," Jamie called, dashing down the stairs with his Ghostbusters figures tucked under his arm. "Do you think Grandma will want to play with these?" Mary chuckled as she adjusted her scarf. "I think Grandma will be happy just to see you, sweetheart." Once the car was packed, the family set off. The roads were lined with fresh snow, and the town looked like something out of a Christmas card. Jamie pressed his nose against the window, pointing out snowmen and decorations as they passed. Their first stop was at Grandma and Grandpa Smith's house. The warm smell of mulled cider and cinnamon greeted them as they stepped inside, and the grandparents were waiting at the door with wide smiles. "There's my little crew," Grandma Smith exclaimed, pulling Jamie into a hug. "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas," Jamie replied, handing her one of his Ghostbusters figures. "This is Winston. He's the best one." Grandpa Smith laughed as he clapped Sam on the back. "You've gotten taller since last time I saw you. Are you still trying to beat me at chess?" Sam grinned. "I might have a chance now." Lucy handed the tin of cookies to Grandma, who peeked inside and gasped, "Oh, these are beautiful. Did you make these yourself?" With Mum's help, Lucy admitted, though she beamed at the compliment. The family settled into the cozy living room, where a fire crackled in the hearth. The children unwrapped small gifts from their grandparents, books for Lucy, a chess strategy guide for Sam, and a puzzle for Jamie. In return, they presented their grandparents with homemade crafts and drawings, which were received with delighted smiles. After a hearty lunch, they headed to their next stop, Mary's parents' house. Grandma and Grandpa Jones lived in a quaint cottage just outside town, and the children always loved visiting because of the treasure trove of stories Grandpa told. As soon as they arrived, Grandpa Jones ushered the children to the sitting room. "Now, who's ready for a Christmas story?" he asked, holding up a worn leather-bound book. "Me," Jamie said, scrambling onto the couch beside him. Lucy and Sam followed, settling in as Grandpa began weaving one of his magical tales about a boy who saved Christmas with the help of a talking reindeer. While the children listened intently, Grandma Jones took Mary aside and handed her a small, wrapped box. "This is for you," she said softly. "Something special." Mary opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet adorned with tiny charms. "It's beautiful," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Mum." The day passed quickly, filled with laughter, stories, and yet another feast. By the time the Smiths headed home, the car was filled with gifts, leftover treats, and sleepy children. As they pulled into their driveway, Jamie yawned and said, "I think today was even better than Christmas." Mary smiled as she helped him out of the car. "That's because Christmas isn't just one day. It's about all the moments we share together." Tom put an arm around her as they walked toward the house. "And we've got a pretty great family to share them with." As the Smiths settled back into their home, Their hearts were full, and the memories of another joyful Christmas were etched into their minds forever. After the busy day, visiting both sets of grandparents, the Smiths returned home just as the last rays of sunlight disappeared over the snowy horizon. The house was warm and inviting, the glow of the Christmas tree casting a magical light in the living room. Everyone was tired but content, ready to settle into the final traditions of their holiday. "Let's get into our pajamas and start the Christmas specials," Mary called as she hung up her coat. "Dibs on the couch," Jamie shouted, already running upstairs to change. Sam followed at a slower pace, carrying a few new books he had received from Grandpa Smith. Lucy lingered near the tree, admiring its sparkling ornaments. The day had been so full of activity that she hadn't taken a moment to simply enjoy the quiet beauty of the room. She picked up one of the handmade ornaments she and her siblings had crafted earlier that month, smiling as she remembered Jamie's flower-covered antics during the decorating process. "Lucy, are you coming?" Tom asked from the kitchen, where he was preparing mugs of hot cocoa for everyone. "Yeah, I'm coming," she replied, setting the ornament back in its place. The family gathered in the living room, each person claiming their favorite spot. Jamie curled up on the couch with his Ghostbusters figures, arranging them neatly on the armrest. Lucy sat on the floor with a blanket draped over her shoulders, while Sam sprawled out in the armchair with his new chess strategy book. Mary and Tom took the love seat, their mugs of cocoa steaming in their hands. "What should we watch first?" Mary asked, holding up a small stack of DVDs. "Only Fools and Horses Christmas Special." Tom suggested, his enthusiasm clear. "It's tradition." The kids groaned in unison. "Dad, you say that every year," Sam said, rolling his eyes. "Can't we watch something new?" "Nope," Tom replied, popping the DVD into the player. "Traditions are important." The opening scene of the beloved comedy filled the room, and soon enough, even the kids were laughing at the antics on screen. Jamie, who didn't fully understand all the jokes, giggled anyway, caught up in the joyful atmosphere. Halfway through, Mary disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a plate of leftover cookies. "Who's hungry?" she asked, placing the plate on the coffee table. Jamie reached for one immediately. "These are the best cookies ever, Mum." "They're Grandma's recipe," Mary said, sitting back down beside Tom. "She'd be happy to hear you say that." As the evening wore on, the family moved on to other specials, including a classic animated film that Jamie insisted on watching every year. By the time the final credits rolled, the kids were beginning to nod off. Lucy had wrapped herself in her blanket, her sketchbook forgotten beside her. Sam was still in the armchair, but his book had fallen onto his chest, and his eyes were closed. Jamie, however, was still awake, clutching Winston, his favorite Ghostbusters figure. "This was the best Christmas ever," he murmured sleepily, his head resting on a cushion. Tom smiled, ruffling Jamie's hair. "Every Christmas is the best one when we're all together." Mary nodded, her heart full as she looked around at her family. The day had been hectic, filled with laughter, love, and a few memorable mishaps, but that was what made it special. As she turned off the TV and began tidying up, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Christmas wasn't just about the gifts or the food. It was about these quiet moments, surrounded by the people who mattered most. And in that room, with her family asleep and the tree softly glowing, Mary felt the magic of the season more strongly than ever. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the settling walls. The Smith family had dispersed for the evening, with the children tucked into their beds after an eventful day filled with laughter, presents, and traditions. The living room, now dimly lit by the twinkling Christmas tree, was strewn with bits of wrapping paper and stray cookie crumbs, a testament to the day's festivities. Mary sat on the couch, a mug of tea in her hands. She leaned back, gazing at the tree with a soft smile. It had been a long day, but a good one. The chaos of the morning, the excitement over gifts, Jamie's near panic about the Ghostbusters figure, and Lucy's attempts at roller skating indoors was already becoming a fond memory. Tom entered the room, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Thought you might want this instead of tea," he said, handing her a glass before sitting beside her. Mary laughed softly, setting her mug on the coffee table. "You know me too well." They clinked glasses gently, the soft sound echoing in the quiet room. "Another Christmas in the books," Tom said, stretching out his legs, "and I'd say it was a good one." "It was," Mary agreed, her gaze shifting to the fireplace where Jamie's note to Santa still sat on the mantel. "The kids were so happy today. I'm glad we could make it special for them." Tom nodded, taking a sip of his wine. "You always find a way to make it magical, even when things don't go exactly to plan." Mary sighed, thinking of the near miss with Jamie's Ghostbusters set. "I came so close to messing it up this year, if I hadn't found that last figure in time." "But you did," Tom interrupted gently, "and seeing Jamie's face when he opened it, worth every second of stress." Mary smiled at the memory. Jamie's pure joy as he completed his Ghostbusters team had been a highlight of the day. She leaned her head against Tom's shoulder, letting out a contented sigh. "They're growing up so fast, though. Lucy's practically a teenager. Sam's already talking about high school, and Jamie, well, I don't know how much longer he'll believe in Santa." Tom chuckled. "That's what makes these moments so important. Each Christmas is unique. We'll never get this exact one back." The weight of his words settled over them both, a bittersweet reminder of how fleeting childhood truly was. Mary resolved to hold on to every memory from this Christmas, the laughter, the chaos, even the quiet moments like this one. After a long pause, Tom spoke again. "You know, the kids weren't the only ones who had a great day. Watching them, it reminded me of why Christmas has always been my favorite time of year." Mary smiled, squeezing his hand. "It's not just about the presents or the traditions. It's about us, all of us being together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their wine and enjoying the warmth of the room. The glow of the tree, the faint smell of pine, and the memories of a perfect day made the moment feel timeless. As the clock struck midnight, Mary stood and stretched. "We should head to bed. The kids will be up early again tomorrow, and I have a feeling Jamie will want to continue his Ghostbusters adventure." Tom laughed, standing as well. "And Lucy will probably want to practice her skating, hopefully outside this time." Together, they turned off the lights, leaving the tree as the only source of illumination. As they climbed the stairs, Mary glanced back at the living room one last time, her heart full. Christmas was more than just a day. It was a collection of moments, memories, and love. And in the Smith household, it had been a Christmas to remember. The morning after Christmas, Boxing Day, began with a slow, relaxed rhythm in the Smith household. The chaos and excitement of Christmas had given way to a calm, cozy atmosphere. The children, still wearing their festive pajamas, gathered in the living room, where the remnants of their Christmas gifts lay scattered. Jamie was already busy with his Ghostbusters set, acting out an epic battle between the team and an invisible ghost. Lucy was flipping through one of the books she had received from Grandma, occasionally jotting notes in the margins for her next sketching project. Sam naturally had his stereo turned on, softly playing a mix of classic rock. Mary and Tom were in the kitchen, sipping coffee and discussing the plans for the day. "Should we tackle the mess today, or leave it for tomorrow?" Tom asked with a grin, gesturing toward the living room, which still bore the evidence of wrapping paper wars and cookie crumbs. Mary smiled, shaking her head. "It's Boxing Day. The mess can wait. Let's enjoy the calm while it lasts." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Mary glanced at Tom, her eyebrows raised. "Were we expecting anyone?" Tom shook his head, setting down his coffee. "I'll get it." He opened the door to find Grandpa George standing on the porch, bundled up in a thick coat and holding a large wooden crate. His face lit up with a warm smile. "Merry Boxing Day," he said, stepping inside. "Grandpa!" Jamie shouted, abandoning his Ghostbusters setup to run and hug him. Lucy and Sam quickly followed, their sleepy expressions replaced with excitement. "What are you doing here, Dad?" Tom asked, taking the crate from him. "You didn't say you were coming over." George chuckled. "I figured I'd keep this visit a surprise. Besides, I brought something special for the kids." The children's eyes widened as they gathered around the crate, which George had placed on the coffee table. It was sealed with a simple latch and the rich scent of what emanated from it. "What is it?" Jamie asked, bouncing on his toes. "Patience," George said, smiling as he undid the latch. He lifted the lid to reveal 3 handcrafted wooden gifts, each carefully polished and adorned with intricate details. For Lucy, there was a beautifully carved easel, its delicate floral patterns showing Grandpa's meticulous craftsmanship. "This is amazing," she exclaimed, running her hands over the smooth surface. "I can finally paint properly." Sam received a chessboard with hand-carved pieces, each one unique. "This is so cool," he said, inspecting the intricate knights and pawns. "Way better than my plastic set." And for Jamie, there was a small wooden treasure chest, its lid engraved with his initials. "What's inside?" Jamie asked eagerly. "Open it and find out," George replied with a wink. Jamie carefully lifted the lid to reveal a set of wooden figurines shaped like ghosts and monsters, perfect companions for his Ghostbusters set. His face lit up. "These are the best ghosts ever." "Thanks, Grandpa." Mary and Tom watched the scene with smiles, their hearts full. "Dad, you've outdone yourself," Mary said, hugging him. "These are incredible." George waved a hand dismissively. "It's nothing. Just wanted to give them something they'll remember." The rest of the morning was spent admiring Grandpa's gifts. Lucy set up her easel near the window and began sketching immediately, while Sam challenged George to a game of chess. Jamie, of course, incorporated the new wooden ghosts into his Ghostbusters adventures, narrating every moment with enthusiasm. As they all sat down for a casual Boxing Day lunch, Mary glanced around the room, taking in the laughter and chatter. "You were right, Dad," she said softly to George. "These are gifts they'll never forget." "Neither will I," George replied, his voice warm. "That's what Christmas is all about, making memories." And as the day unfolded, it became another chapter in the Smith family's collection of cherished holiday moments. Boxing Day afternoon brought clear skies and a world still covered in fresh, glistening snow. After spending the morning enjoying Grandpa George's handcrafted gifts, the Smith children grew restless. Jamie, in particular, was eager to get outside. "Can we go sledding?" he asked, tugging on Mary's sleeve. "Please? The hill by the park must be perfect today." Mary looked out the window, smiling at the picturesque view. "That's not a bad idea," she said. "It's too nice to stay indoors." Tom nodded in agreement. "Let's grab the sleds and make a day of it." Within minutes, the family was bundled up in thick coats, hats, and scarves. Lucy insisted on bringing her roller skates to test on the cleared sidewalks, while Sam carried an old wooden sled their dad had repaired the year before. Jamie, as usual, was already running ahead, his excitement contagious. When they arrived at the park, they weren't the only ones with the idea. Families and children dotted the snowy hill, their laughter echoing in the crisp air. The Smiths claimed a spot near the top of the hill, where they set down their sleds. "Who's going first?" Tom asked, holding the sled steady. Me. Jamie shouted, hopping on. Mary positioned him carefully, ensuring his scarf was tucked in and his gloves secure. "Hold on tight," she said, giving the sled a gentle push. Jamie zoomed down the hill, his squeals of delight carrying back to the top. "That looks fun," Lucy admitted, handing her skates to Mary. "I'm going next." Lucy's run was more graceful, her sled gliding smoothly over the snow. Sam, ever the competitor, tried to go faster, leaning forward to maximize speed, but ending up face first in a snowbank halfway down. "That's what you get for trying to beat me," Lucy called from the bottom of the hill, laughing. Tom, not to be outdone by his kids, grabbed the sled and launched himself down the hill with exaggerated flair. The children cheered as he skidded to a stop near Jamie, snow flying everywhere. "Dad wins for style points," Jamie declared, clapping his mittens together. As the afternoon wore on, the family built snowmen and engaged in an impromptu snowball fight. Jamie, wielding a wooden ghost trap he brought from Grandpa George's gift, declared himself the team leader, shouting instructions to his siblings. "Lucy, take cover. There's a ghost behind the snowman," he yelled, hurling a snowball toward Sam. "That's not a ghost, it's me," Sam protested, laughing as he dodged the snowball and retaliated with one of his own. Mary and Tom watched from the sidelines, their cheeks pink from the cold. "This is exactly what I hoped for," Mary said, leaning into Tom's side. You mean a bunch of wet, cold kids to clean up later? Tom teased. Mary rolled her eyes, smiling. No, just this. The joy, the laughter. It's what Christmas is all about. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the Smiths reluctantly decided it was time to head home. They trudged back through the snow, Jamie lagging behind as he tried to catch one last snowflake on his tongue. Back at home, the warmth of the house was a welcome relief. Mary quickly set about making hot chocolate, complete with marshmallows, as the children peeled off their wet clothes and wrapped themselves in blankets. That was the best day ever, Jamie declared, his cheeks still rosy from the cold. Can we do it again tomorrow? We'll see, Mary said, handing him a steaming mug. Let's see if we can all warm up first. The family settled into the living room, sipping their hot chocolate and recounting the day's adventures. Snowy Boxing Day afternoons like this, filled with love and laughter, were the kind of memories that would last a lifetime. The glow of the fireplace warmed the living room as the Smith family relaxed after their snowy Boxing Day adventures. Jamie, wrapped in his favorite blanket and clutching Winston, the leader of his Ghostbusters team, watched the flames flicker. His siblings were sprawled across the couch, Sam flipping through his chess strategy book, and Lucy doodling in her new sketchpad. As Mary walked in with another round of hot chocolate, she noticed Jamie's unusually quiet demeanor. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" she asked, setting a mug down beside him. Jamie looked up, his expression thoughtful. "I was just thinking about today," he said. "It was really fun." "It was," Mary agreed, sitting beside him. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." Jamie nodded but didn't say anything more. A moment later, Tom entered the room carrying a tin of leftover cookies. "Who wants dessert?" he asked, hold it out. "Me," Jamie said, brightening up again. He grabbed a cookie and took a bite, his earlier silence forgotten. As the family settled into a quiet rhythm, Jamie suddenly spoke again. "Mom, Dad," he said, his voice soft but steady, "I've been thinking, Christmas isn't just about presents, is it?" The room fell silent, everyone turning to look at him. Mary smiled gently. "No, it's not, Jamie. Why do you ask?" Jamie shifted, holding Winston a little tighter. "I mean, I love my Ghostbusters toys and everything, but today was so fun because we were all together. Even when Sam threw a snowball at me," Sam grinned from his spot on the couch. "It was a good shot." Jamie ignored him, continuing, "And when Grandpa came over yesterday and gave us those cool wooden gifts, that was the best part of Christmas. Not just the stuff, but everyone being happy together." Mary's eyes glistened as she listened to her youngest son. "That's exactly what Christmas is about, Jamie. It's about spending time with the people you love and making memories together." Jamie tilted his head. "So, even if I didn't get all my Ghostbusters toys, it still would have been the best Christmas?" Tom chuckled, sitting on the arm of the couch. "That's right, kiddo. The presents are nice, but it's the moments we share that make it special." Lucy smiled at Jamie. "You're pretty smart for a little brother." Jamie beamed at the compliment, then turned to Sam. "Does that mean you'll stop stealing the good cookies?" Sam snorted. "Not a chance." The family burst into laughter, the warmth of their bond filling the room. Mary reached over and ruffled Jamie's hair. "You figured out something that some people take years to learn, Jamie. I'm proud of you." Jamie grinned, a sense of pride and contentment settling over him. He looked around the room at his family, Lucy sketching, Sam joking, and his parents smiling, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. As the night wore on, the family continued sharing stories and laughs, the soft glow of the fire and the twinkle of the Christmas tree creating a magical ambience. For Jamie, it was a moment of clarity. The true magic of Christmas wasn't found under the tree, but in the love and joy that surrounded him. And that, he decided, was better than any present. The final evening of the Christmas holidays unfolded with a quiet charm. The Smith family gathered in the living room, the soft glow of the fireplace and the twinkling Christmas tree lights wrapping the room in warmth. Outside, the snow-covered world was still, reflecting the peacefulness inside the house. Jamie sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his Ghostbusters figures and wooden ghosts from Grandpa George. He'd spent the day creating a new adventure for the team, one that involved saving the Christmas tree from a mischievous poltergeist. Lucy, perched on the armchair, was adding the finishing touches to a watercolor painting of a snow-covered house, her new easel positioned near the window. Sam was hunched over the chessboard Grandpa George had made, challenging Tom to yet another game. Mary entered the room carrying a plate of freshly baked cookies, the smell wafting through the air. "One last treat for the season," she announced, setting the plate on the coffee table. "Don't mind if I do," Tom said, pausing his chess game to grab a cookie. "Dad, focus," Sam protested. "I'm about to beat you." Tom raised an eyebrow, smirking. "We'll see about that." Mary sat beside Jamie and smiled as she watched him narrate an elaborate storyline involving Winston, the Ecto-1 car, and one of the wooden ghosts. "You've got quite the imagination, Jamie." Jamie looked up grinning. "It's fun making up stories. Maybe I'll write them down someday." "You should," Mary encouraged. "You'd make a great storyteller." As the evening went on, the family's chatter and laughter filled the room. Lucy proudly showed off her finished painting, earning praise from everyone. Sam finally managed to win a chess match against Tom, celebrating with a triumphant fist pump. Jamie performed a dramatic reenactment of his Ghostbusters adventure, complete with sound effects. As the clock ticked closer to bedtime, Jamie climbed onto the couch and snuggled under a blanket. "This has been the best Christmas ever," he declared, his voice drowsy but happy. "It really has," Lucy agreed, setting her painting aside. "Everything about it has been perfect." Mary looked at Tom, her eyes reflecting the same warmth that filled her heart. "It's been magical because we've all been together." Tom nodded. "That's what makes Christmas special, being with the people you love." Jamie yawned, resting his head on Mary's shoulder. "Do you think next Christmas will be just as good?" Mary kissed his forehead. "Every Christmas is special in its own way, Jamie. It's not about what we get or what we